You know, it wasn't until I got this camera on me did I realize this video would probably be much better if I had a fucking green screen. So I actually want to animate my intro, but I can't draw well yet. So, this is a placeholder. Hi, welcome back to my channel, everyone. My name is Mex. I like to talk about media and just things that pique my interest when it comes to media. Now, today is a bit more of a out there video. Because of the state of the world right now, like I said in one of my previous videos, I decided to go back to Steven Universe because it really was the one point in my life where I felt some type of stability. Like, Obama really made me think that I could become anything. And then Trump squashed it. And then the pandemic fucked it up. And here comes that orange motherfucker again. This man has been around for my entire educational career. From middle school all the way now into college. Fucking hell, I'll probably graduate college by the time this man is leaving the presidency. So, it's crazy fucking times, for real. But anyway, I decided to go back to Steven Universe, and I realized that the map of Steven Universe, like the map that we have of Earth, is vastly different than the Earth in real life. Like, I just never picked up on that detail when I was younger, and now I was like, wait a second, that's really strange. So I looked up the map, and there's a lot of things to like look over. So I'm going to make an entire video basically talking about every single continent, some historical things that might change because of these like geological differences, and also how this new geology would affect like the planet and just how certain countries do run nowadays. Now, I'm going to preface this by saying I am not a geologist, okay? I'm not a geologist. I am not studying geology. I am not studying any of the sciences, okay? I just like to buy atlases and put realistic expectations onto fantasy maps, okay? That's it. Simple as that. That's all I do, and we gotta just accept that. Now, as we're going to start, I just want to say it already gets fucking insane. If you don't know anything about Steven Universe, the gems are this alien race that basically go to other planets to basically help grow more gems. Like, they need to be, like, think of them like actual gemstones. Like, they need to be, like, compressurized in, like, a hot, tight space so that they can burst out fully formed and, like, get on the job. So they go to different planets and do this. And one of the planets that they went on was Earth 6,000 years ago. So they started to do their whole thing, and, like, Pink Diamond realized, oh yeah, I kind of don't like fuck with this, and then there was a whole revolution, and now the homeworld gems are gone. There's a bunch of corrupted gems because of like shenanigans. It's a whole thing. That's the best way to describe the plot that's going on. But because of this, the gems would have to terraform a planet. If you don't know what terraforming is, it is a science fiction concept where basically you use something to change the geology and also climate of a certain planet to make it more applicable for whatever species you're on. So for example, if Earth wanted to like take over Mars, we would have to terraform the planet to our standards. So like oxygen, water, making sure that trees could survive on the planet. So we would basically be turning a desert planet into like Earth 2.0. That's the best way that I can describe it. So because of this, it will cause serious climate differences compared to our Earth. For one, because gems need to have like a heated up space to like, you know, grow and cultivate, that means that they would have had to have warmed the planet. So that means that 6,000 years ago when they were doing this, their terraforming would have warmed up our planet significantly, which means that climate change might be a more dire issue in the Steven Universe in compared to our universe. Like, they were having global warming issues before they even discovered fossil fuels. So, already on to a very rough start. We're going to be going by continents. So, we're going to do the continents first, from North America to Australia to Antarctica. Then after that, we're going to go into like some gems tech and gems settlements that we see across the show. And then I'm also going to talk a little bit about the government. So, first things first. I'm going to interchange between two different maps. This is the official map that we see within the show, and it's probably the most clearest, distinct map. You can find this map in the episode season 2, episode 4. At least that's how Hulu has it listed. As it could have been great, where they go to the moon base and see what Earth like looks like right now, and it even shows what Earth was going to look like if the gems had continued their cultivation of the Earth. So it wouldn't have looked all that great. I'm also going to be using this map that the user, I think it's Gum Skylord, used on the Imaginary Map subreddit. He did like a more clarifying version of like what the map would look like if it was like made by, you know, humans. So I'm going to be interchanging between those because the official map shows some other things that he doesn't show on his map. So we're going to like interchange between the two. There's also another map that I'm using, and I'm going to put who it is, which is I'm going to be using for like the gen settlements and gem tech that we see throughout the show. So starting off with North America, and just don't mind me using my laptop. I wish I had a tablet. Okay, now the top of North America looks relatively normal. Alaska and Canada don't seem to have been affected too much by all the global warming and stuff like that that happened because of the gems. However, once we go over to Greenland, we do notice that Greenland has shown some sort of like erosion happening around its size. Like it seems to have gone down in size, which means that there could be rising sea levels, which would cause this effect. So now Greenland has been reduced in size, which means we've kind of lost a pretty decent chunk of ice that comes from Greenland. So not really great. Going down lower, we start to see even more changes. For example, in the US, in Steven Universe, only has 39 states. Like, I don't have an issue that they decided to make it where it's like we don't have all 50 states, but like, you couldn't round that shit to 40? I'm just saying. I feel like we could have rounded that to 40. Anyway, we can see that Florida no longer exists. More so, the United States of America no longer has a peninsula because the peninsula is Florida. Florida isn't there anymore. Florida has now become a chain of islands. Now, it seems that these chains of islands could probably become a part of the Caribbean because Florida is already very close to the Bahamas, so I wouldn't be that surprised if either one, America made Florida a U.S. territory because it's no longer like connected to like the continental U.S. So it's like, we'll just make it a territory like they do for my island in Puerto Rico. But it could also have become a part of the Caribbean. More specifically, it could be considered one of the bigger islands of like the Bahamas. But that also depends on like geography and certain types of colonization that would have had to happen. I can't be 100% sure of the history that happened. Heading into Mexico, Mexico seems to be doing okay. Like it still seems to be like the same average size that it used to be. However, when we go to Central America is where it gets like really messed up. Instead of having a bridge from south to north, it's now become an archipelago. We see like a bunch of like bigger islands clustered between. So again, it does look like rising sea levels cause this, you know, part of land to now suddenly become an archipelago. But it does add an interesting aspect because now in this universe, the Panama Canal would not have to be created because it is now a naturally occurring thing. But also, if you look at the map, it almost seems as if Panama just does not exist anymore. And if it does exist, it's like these two little tiny islands in between. So that's very interesting. That honestly takes away from one of Theodore Roosevelt's like accomplishments because he was known for helping with the Great Depression and then also the process of like building the Panama Canal. So unfortunately, he just lost one of his accomplishments in this universe. But that's about it for now. So let's go over to South America. Because Central America is no longer bridging North America with South America is now an island continent. So hey, that's really cool. And now secondly, the more obvious thing that we see, South America has now doubled, if not tripled in size. And we're going to get into why it's done that once we reach Africa. But yeah, South America has like tripled in size expeditiously. Brazil has basically had an expansion upgrade. The Amazon rainforest, because of this expansion, has now become even bigger than it already is. I wouldn't even be surprised if a new country has taken over like where that new section of land is now, because I don't think Brazil can lay claim to all of that. So there might be a new country. If not, Brazil has become a bigger country, then there has now been another country that has now been added into South America. Another interesting thing that we see from this expansion, if we look lower down, we see like a chain of islands that are like going from South America all the way to Africa. So I do kind of wonder if this like affected trading, because it's like one big island, another big island, and then a few smaller islands. So it's like a little chain of islands that's like leading you from South America, or this expansion of Brazil, all the way over to like South Africa. Well, not South Africa directly, but like Southern Africa. So I do wonder if this like affected trade, if we see more Africans in like South America who migrated because, you know, colonialism or stuff like that. And now we're gonna go into Africa. I can't use any of the Africa songs because of copyright. Now, South America has become the second largest continent in this universe. And you wanna know why? Look at Africa. As if Africa doesn't already deal with enough fucking shit on a daily fucking basis. Now in this fictional universe, it has been fucked. The crown of Africa is fucking gone. Like, Africa has taken a gut punch in this universe. The only way because we see, if the crown of Africa is gone and we look at South America basically took Africa's crown. That's crazy to think about. Even crazier to think about, the only way for that to be possible is for the gems to have come to Earth while Pangea was shifting. That's the only other way that the crown of Africa could have possibly become interconnected with South America and expand South America by that size. That's fucking crazy. Because the crown of Africa is now gone, the savannah has decreased in size and maybe it still is the largest desert, but it has been reduced significantly to what it is in our universe. Not to mention the fact that now a bunch of African countries are gone. For instance, North Africa has been cut in half because of this. West Africa is gone. The entirety of West Africa is gone. I did a comprehensive list of what I could best see from the map of all the African countries that would be gone now because the crown of Africa is gone. You want to know how many countries that we have that are gone? The countries of Algeria and Morocco looks to have been cut in half. The countries that no longer exist are West Sahara, the Cape of Verde, I hope I say this right, Mauritania, Mali, Niger, Guinea, Ghana, Nigeria, Burkina Faso. That's almost 9 countries gone. 9 countries. Nigerians are gone. Ghanaians are gone. Like, all of West Africa is now gone. That's a very crazy thing to think about. Also, this would have to have some type of effect on, like, the African savannah. This would also affect the population of Africa because, again, a vast majority of countries are now gone, which means that Africa's population has been cut in half. Like, they have lost millions of people now. Like, the continent of Africa does not have as many people as it used to be. It would probably now be the 3rd largest continent because, again, it's missing its crown. Even crazier aspect here to think about is the historical impact this would have, like the transatlantic slave trade. Yeah, I know, crazy ass topic to bring up, but like, yeah, this would have an impact on the transatlantic slave trade. Because the crown of Africa is gone, West Africa doesn't exist, so it does make me wonder if now the more, like, this section that we see, that I'm showing on the map, if this section that we see can now be considered, like, maybe that's now considered West Africa, or at the very least, like, Northern Africa. Well, not Northern Africa, because we still have a few northern countries up there, but, like, maybe this is considered to be the new West Africa, because it's, like, closer to the beaches, and then we still have South America, and then the inner parts on the opposite side are now, like, Eastern Africa, but, like, still a crazy ass concept to think about. And then with the transatlantic slave trade, because, you know, if you see a map of the transatlantic slave trade, you'll see that they were mostly circling on, like, the crown, like the coast of Africa, and that's where we're getting most of our slaves from. So, like, whenever African Americans do, like, DNA tests, you'll constantly see, like, Nigeria or Ghana or just, like, a bunch of other African countries that are found on the coast, because that was, like, the most accessible way to get the slaves. Then they would be transferred over from either South America to the Caribbean. If not there, they would then head over to North America. Because of the increase in Brazil's size, I do wonder if they sent more slaves down to Brazil, because more landmass, more resources, more things to cover. So maybe Brazil had more resources, so that means maybe more slaves got sent down there. I do kind of wonder about the Caribbean, because with increasing water levels, it does make me wonder if there are less Caribbean islands, or more Caribbean islands, whereas like maybe smaller islands got sucked under, but then bigger islands got split into like even smaller islands. Like that would be an interesting aspect, but the maps that I've seen for it make it look like the Caribbean is still around and looks relatively the same. So I can't be 100% sure about the Caribbean. But because of the getting back on the transatlantic slave trade, if we're looking at that map now, I would not be like too surprised if the transatlantic slave trade did in fact happen. We're probably seeing more people from the nations of Algeria, Chad, and Cameroon instead of, you know, Nigeria, Ghana, that type of thing. I don't know what kind of impact that would have on the African savannah, though. It would have to have an impact now because, again, cut in half beaches where there used to be landlocked countries. Like, those countries were landlocked. So now they have beaches. That's going to affect the savannah because these countries are where the savannah is like relatively located. So now with a sudden influx of water and coastal beaches, like that has to have some type of impact on the savannah. But I guess if we're looking at good news, the countries like Algeria, which has been cut in half, Chad and Cameroon now have beaches. So congratulations.
Are you happy to be in Paris?
At first glance, completely normal. I'd say because of like rising speed levels, you know, like rising sea levels, maybe a few of the more like coastal European countries maybe got a few incidences. Maybe Greece has gotten a few more islands because of an increase in water. So even the smaller islands got cut into like even smaller islands. Sicily might have also decreased in size because it is an island technically. Maybe Italy has lost a few of its beaches. Who knows? Maybe it's even lost its heel because it's a boot. Portugal could possibly have less mass than it used to, or doesn't exist anymore because of the rising sea levels. Can't say that for certain. Wales and maybe the UK as well also might have lost a bit of land because of rising sea levels. It is shown in multiple maps that Iceland no longer exists anymore, which means we have lost a very big geothermal player. And also, lava does not exist in this universe, which is very, very sad. And then we get to Russia. I don't think I need to tell you what's going on in this picture. Russia is now fucked. Like, it is fucked. Like, Rebecca Sugar took that whole, they banned Steven Universe in Russia because of the LGBTQ stuff fucking seriously. Because, look at this shit. Look at this shit. This is some crazy ass fucking shit. So, what type of consequences would this have? Now, there is a completely new sea. What they named this sea, I really can't say. But there is now a new sea. It's now, it's a sea. Could be considered a basin if you really look at it. But I would consider it a sea. Now, Russia has been gradually reduced in size. It is no longer, it's no longer the largest country in the world because it's no longer completely connected with each other. So, Russia has, lost some of its superpower strength because I feel like the reason Russia, again, don't quote me on this, I am no, political science expert and I'm no geology expert, but I feel like the reason that Russia is such a superpower is because of its landmass. It's because of how big of a country it is. And because of how big of a country it is, it has a lot of resources. Like, if you've been wondering, why have gas prices been so much higher since 2022? Because Russia is our main exporter of fossil fuels. They are our biggest exporter in fossil fuels. And now that most of that land is gone, it is no longer one of the biggest fossil fuel exporters. In fact, we have lost a vast majority of our fossil fuels because of this, which is really crazy to think about. I do kind of wonder the effects this would have on the Soviet Union because, again, it's not as big as it used to be. So how would this affect the Soviet Union? It does make me wonder if now they were trying to push more into the more Western European countries. Probably got their ass kicked because, Russia. I do wonder if they went to try and colonize the other part of Russia, at least what would be Russia if it was still interconnected. But I do also wonder if because this, now that there's a sea separating them, that this part of Russia is now no longer a part of Russia and might have become a part of some other Asian country. It could either belong to Mongolia, if that still exists, because this map is very hard to see because there's no like borders or anything, so it's very hard to see whether or not Mongolia still exists or not. But I'm gonna say that Mongolia still exists, so it could either belong to Mongolia, China could have invaded it, or even Korea, because that would literally connect them directly to Korea. Like, Russia is connected to North Korea, so there's a direct connection with Korea and this massive land. So who knows, Korea could have expanded in size, if anything. But I'm gonna lean more on China, because China was the one doing that shit a bit more often. But hey, Korea could have put its foot in. I really don't know. East, perfectly okay, no changes. They got away scot fucking free. They did not, like, they're doing okay. Going more over to India, which is normally a peninsula, it now has 3 to 4 large islands. I can't say whether or not these islands would make up India as a country, or if they would just be like their own separate countries. Like, it could be like the Indian Islands, or it could just be islands that are all separate and maybe they have like a unification thing. But I would more so lean towards each island is its own separate country, instead of like they all came together and became like the Indian Islands. Most of Southeast Asia looks okay. I will say that maybe we got a few extra or a few less islands, because again, the increasing sea levels, so we can't tell for sure if we got some more islands or less islands. Same can be said for East Asia, like Japan and Korea. They also seem to be doing relatively okay. I am still having the hardest time trying to identify whether or not Mongolia is still there, because again, there's like this big sea. Mongolia, which used to be a landlocked country, would now have beaches. So a crazy thing to like think about. Another thing, I would wonder how this would affect Mongolia as an empire, because like, you know, if it had Russia there, we do have like historical evidence that like the Mongolians did like interact with Russia, talk with Russians, even invaded some Russian villages. So now they no longer have that. It makes me wonder if this will make it more ample for China to like take Mongolia, and then Mongolia became a part of China. But I'm going to say that Mongolia still stays its own country, because even in the real world, Mongolia is still its own separate country. So I don't know how much influence it gets from China, how much like resources it gets from, it probably gets a decent amount of resources from China, but I don't know how much help it gets from China as like a government. I can't really say. If Mongolia is still around though, I would say it probably has decreased in size, because again, they have these beaches now, so that would also like probably decrease their size as well. China does seem to look relatively the same, so still probably a very big country in comparison. And down under. Okay, so down under, Australia is a solid island continent, but it seems to be broken apart and split into 3 larger islands by like the more northern part of it, like the northwestern part of it. It seems to have been split up into about 3 to 4 larger islands, instead of just being a solid island continent instead. This would probably reduce the size of the outback, because if you look up a map of Australia and see like where all of Australia's cities are, you're gonna notice that every single one of their cities are coastal cities, because the coastal cities are the best places for agriculture. The rest of Australia, that is outback. Just straight up outback. Crazy to think about. Like, I keep forgetting that like people just like live on like that island continent. I even have a friend there. Hi Luna. I know you're seeing this video. Hi Luna. But like it's crazy to think about. Like, they only have coastal cities, but now with this division, like we could like see all these islands. So those islands would become like more tropical, probably, because again, they're islands now that they're like more close, like surrounded by ocean completely. It makes it easier for more like air and water to go in. So I would be expecting like these nations would probably have been outback if they just stayed connected to Australia. But now, since they're islands now, more plants, more trees, more everything. Like, think of New Zealand. They would probably become like New Zealand. Whether or not, like, they would be considered a part of the Australian continent, because New Zealand is a part of the Australian continent. However, I do wonder if it would be connected with Australia as a country, or if they would be their own separate countries in Australia. But I'm gonna say that it's more, because again, there is like one island that's like still pretty close. So they're like, if we were to take a boat there, hypothetically, maybe an hour, 2-hour boat ride. So it's still very close to like the other lands. So it does make me wonder to myself, okay, if it's that close by, then maybe possibly it just got lumped in with Australia completely as another country. New Zealand looks like to be split apart into like different islands as well. So instead of just being one solid island, it is now just an archipelago again. Like, we see a lot of archipelagos in Steven Universe because of the rising sea levels. Like, ain't that fun? I'm just gonna include Antarctica as well. To incubate gems, like I said, you would have to have a warm planet, and because of this, there's going to be more melted ice caps in Steven Universe, which means that what we see now with climate change in 2024, 2025, would have probably been the normal in Steven Universe's universe. That's a tongue twister. But yeah, in Steven Universe's universe, they probably have way more melted ice caps. The Antarctic probably looks way more like desolate and melted than it does in our world. So they probably had very little crunch time when it came to climate change. But who knows? Maybe because they have so little crunch time, they got on their fucking shit. Now, getting to gem tech and architecture, I feel like being an archaeologist is already a very interesting job in the real world, but I feel like in this world, it has to be an even cooler job. While I was doing this video, I couldn't stop thinking to myself how interesting it would have been if Steven Universe did actually go to school. Because if Steven actually did go to school, they could have done a whole gag where before he went on like his like gem missions, he could have like been at school, have his last class of the day be like history class, and then like have his history teacher talk about like the history of like these gem artifacts that we see throughout the show, or like current events that happen because of like the gems interference with like history. Like, I feel like it would have been such an interesting thing to look at. I feel like they were trying to do this with like Ronaldo's character, but like it's Ronaldo, and like his stuff comes more as like conspiratorial than like actual academic papers about like possible alien life or like foregone species that lived on Earth before humans, or who knows, even interacted with humans when we were like, you know, starting to develop. Like, we can't be totally certain because the residents of Beach City, they don't really give a fuck. I kind of do wonder if they're on drugs. Like, not to be that person, but like when you see Ronaldo and like you kind of look at it from his perspective, he kind of had a reason to be tweaking out. I won't even lie. Like, why are we treating the fact that we have like 3 fucking aliens in our city like that's completely normal? Like, we just got like these 3 random ass aliens that have been around for fucking centuries fighting bad guys. We be having an alien spaceship coming to our beachfront every year, at least once every 6 months. The fact that Steven is like a human alien hybrid, that's a crazy, like, you're interacting on a day-to-day basis with a half human, half alien. Like, you could kind of see why the man was tweaking out a little bit. But for this section, I'm mainly going to be talking about like different structures that we see from Earth that came from like Homeworld, or from like, you know, Homeworld's like, you know, troubling around with like Earth and its geology and geography. One thing I am going to start this off with all the different structures, with all the different technologies, I feel like historians and scientists would come to the conclusion that there had to have been an advanced intellectual species that came to Earth. Either they think it's alien life, or it was a species that used to live on Earth that no longer lives on Earth. However, I wouldn't be surprised if this causes some sort of academic debate within universities, because again, the technology would kind of look human in a sense, or at the very least look like it would benefit like human-like beings. But at the same time, with some of the technology that there is found, it would almost seem like it's alien life coming to Earth instead. Now, of course, as the viewers, we know that they're aliens. But in this universe, let's like look at it how we would look at it. So, big debate about whether or not it's aliens or a advanced species that no longer exists. However, I do feel like more people would land in favor of aliens, because there would be no bone, because, you know, the crystal gems don't have like physical bodies. So they would probably lean towards more aliens, because there are no bones to really be found of like another advanced species existing, unlike how we have like, you know, the Neanderthal and other Homo sapien adjacent species. So that's gonna be an interesting part. So they would have to believe in some sort of alien or advanced race. So let's look at each and every single settlement and architecture that we see from the gems that happens and see what kind of consequences that might have for scientists, historians, and archaeologists. So the first one we have is the communication hub, location somewhere in the North American desert, possibly Nevada or the in-universe equivalent of Nevada. The communication hub we saw in the episode A Cry for Help, where we see Sardonyx transform for the first time. Peridot uses this communication hub to try and get a message out to Homeworld. This communication hub is so strong that it affects telecommunications across the board. We see that this communications hub, because the map shows that it's probably taking place somewhere in Nevada or Utah, one of the either states in North America's desert. So all the way over there is able to send telecommunication signals across to the East Coast where Steven is. And he says that it's not only on his TV, but also on Connie's TV. And we know that Connie lives a little more in the suburban area, so probably also near the city too. So that's a pretty big signal output. Who knows? That shit could have even traveled to Canada and Mexico. So that's something to think about, definitely. Also, we do see Peridot actively asking for help, like an actual alien asking for help. This would have to have people have gone to this communication hub, because they would have to think like, oh, it's that big structure that we saw in the communication when we did investigating. Historical reasons, I feel like the natives would have had to have stumbled across the structure, probably left it alone because they didn't know what the fuck it was, so they kind of left it be. Then the pioneers would have found it because of the Great Migration. And I wouldn't be surprised if this became a tourist destination, because we don't exactly see the gems visit this spot in the daytime. We've only ever seen them go there at night. So I do think that this could be something that scientists do investigate, especially after the activity that Peridot did. This would become some sort of hotspot, and probably got closed down because of that whole message thing with Peridot. I wouldn't be surprised if that frequency was also heard on radios as well, if it was affecting TVs. The Beta Kindergarten, somewhere in the Mexican desert. Now, this is one of the kindergartens that we see throughout the show. They have the Beta Kindergarten and then the Prime Kindergarten, which is back in North America. So the Beta Kindergarten is where Jasper came from, and it has cliffs covered in human-sized holes with a few incubators that we can see scattered across the desert land. I wouldn't be surprised if humans came across this, did not know what the fuck this was, and I think that this would have scientists investigating it, because it's okay, what the fuck made these human-sized holes? And even then, these holes are bigger than the average person. We do know there are gems that are 8 feet tall, so these things are bigger than your average human. So were these it would bring a lot of discussion, not just from scientists, because the scientists would probably be investigating the incubators in and of itself to try and figure out what the fuck they were used for. While I do feel the holes themselves were being discovered by archaeologists and historians, maybe they thought that these holes were used as a way to shield the person from the elements. Maybe that's how the species would shield itself, instead of thinking of it as a birthing process. So maybe they think the humans, or these human adjacent species, probably use these holes to sleep in or take cover from the elements. But we do know that there are corrupted gems in the Beta Kindergarten, so investigation might be halted on this area constantly, because they find a new corrupted gem and then they have to constantly deal with that threat over and over and over again. So who knows? Humans probably do know about corrupted gems in this universe, because while yes, the gems have sorry, stuffy nose, but the gems have in this universe been collecting these gems, killing them, making sure that there aren't too much of a threat to humans. But at the same time, they haven't found all of them. We still see some running around across the series, so there ain't no way humans haven't interacted with these things before. But they have probably blockaded this area from the public, so only scientists ever go there, and even then it's really for very quick reconnaissance trips to do some more investigating before they get found by another corrupted gem. Prime Kindergarten, location Southeast America, possibly somewhere in Appalachia, or Appalachia. I think it's Appalachia. The kindergarten that Amethyst came from, I'd say similar reasons as the Beta. We do see incubators literally clinging to the wall, so this is probably barred off from the public because those things could fall off at any fucking moment. We do see that they were able to get there by train, and we do see it in the distance. So there seems to be a train that has a direct view of this Prime Kindergarten. So humans definitely see this very daily, but probably don't go investigating it unless they're scientists or historians. This one is a bit more bleak and probably had a bit more of a history attached to it. The Lunar Sea Spire, location in the middle of the North Atlantic, somewhere between Newfoundland and south of Greenland. Now, the Lunar Spire actually is going to cause a bit of problems. Looking at the Lunar Spire, we obviously see that it causes some sort of like ripple whirlpool effect, where it basically creates a solid circular foundation of like it's like a whirlpool, but a whirlpool with more depth and actual land with it. And now it's also a structure that is so tall that it would have to be a very tall structure, because again, it's in the middle of the North Atlantic. So if we think about the Titanic, like how deep down the Titanic is, I'll say maybe they have the technology where they just like put like a disc or something, so it's not as deep as we think, but it's still pretty deep, and it's like outwardly out there. I have to wonder if this affected how Vikings got to Canada, because we do see in universe of the show that the Canadian flag is green. I don't know enough about Canadian history to say whether or not that the Vikings not making it to Canada would affect the color of their flag, but it probably could, because again, with this area, and we do know within the episode, because this is in Cheeseburger Backpack is where we see the Lunar Spire, I do have to wonder, because Garnet literally says that they couldn't jump across to get to the spire because it literally has like a downpull effect. So anything that jumps in between the gaps would immediately crash down. Like it would be like throwing a ball up with the sun's gravity. Like it would get smushed by the time it entered that gravitational pull. So it does make you wonder to yourself, okay, how many ships probably sank because they didn't notice the waterfall whirlpool effect? That would have to also be put down on maps, because it would have to happen enough times where it's like, yeah, we're going to make sure to avoid that area. And it would have to show up on maps. And then after the Cheeseburger Backpack episode, the spire is destroyed, which means that whirlpool is also destroyed, which means that an area that sailors have probably been avoiding for like years is now gone, and would cause scientists like worried. Probably a bunch of like submarines were like looking for like the artifacts of the Lunar Spire, because again, where the fuck did it go? Like they don't know where it went. Mask Island, location somewhere in Bermuda or the Bermuda Triangle. Nothing much I can really say, since this island is like relatively normal in comparison to other gem artifacts and gem tech. If anything, it might be considered to be made by humans because of how it looks. If not made by humans, maybe to think it's a naturally occurring phenomenon. Like, you know how sometimes there are those crystal caves that you find in like certain countries? I think Mexico has a crystal cave. I forgot which city, which country has like crystal caves, but like there are countries that have like crystal caves. So maybe that's what they think it is, that like it was a cave that got like broken apart by like an earthquake, and now it has like this geo pattern that we see in the show. It's a very pretty island though. I wouldn't be surprised if we get like a lot of tourists, but I do feel like after Watermelon Steven, a few scientists have visited the island to figure out why the fuck that there are these humanoid looking watermelons that can move around. Definitely sparked a few questions. Somewhere in the Caribbean, we don't know for sure. Now this artifact is actually underwater, and we also don't know how deep underwater it is. I'm gonna say it's deep, but not too deep. So maybe they send submarines to look at it. However, exploration of it is too hard, because you know you'd have to send divers there, and depending on how deep down it is, you can send a diver down there. So maybe they're waiting for more technological advancements to happen so that they can investigate the Sea Spire, since you know they don't have the warp pads like the gems do. Also, I think the Sea Shrine doesn't exist anymore after the episode of the Time Stevens. I gotta check that out to be sure, but I don't think that the Sea Shrine, yeah, no, it doesn't exist anymore because it got like washed out. Ancient gem colony ship, location somewhere in South America, either the border of Brazil, Bolivia, or Paraguay. That would support archaeological discussions and historical discussions about whether or not this is alien life or just an advanced human civilization. Again, I would say it would spark the debate instead of like give canon confirmation of alien life, because it is a spaceship, correct? But at the same time, if we're thinking that this species is like way more technologically advanced than humans were, then maybe they already figured out space travel and were already like traveling through space. So maybe they also think that it's not alien, it's human or humanoid, not technologically advanced, and then ended up like migrating to other places because it had like these space programs going on. But again, this would still cause a like up debate about, okay, are they aliens or are they just really advanced human-esque life forces? I also feel like this would have to be investigated by like, you know, other archaeologists, historians, scientists. But we do know that corrupted gems are there. So because there are corrupted gems there, this would probably be barred off from investigation very frequently. And with how it's positioned, it would be also very hard to like navigate the ship. The Sandcastle Desert Gem, location the Sahara Desert, possibly in Libya, was possibly seen to be made by humans. I wouldn't be surprised because while yes, it is still an advanced structure, it's still within the realm of possibility that like humans could have made it. Like it probably got like the like Egypt treatment, which don't get me started about the pyramids of Giza, because my thought on people who think that the pyramids of Giza were like made by aliens, I think they need to go back to a history class. I genuinely believe that, because I do feel like it has weirdly racist connotations to say that like Egyptian civilization that was already very advanced in many regards when it came to medicine and many other archaeological feats could not possibly have created a bunch of big ass pyramids. Like everyone is like, oh, but how did they cut the stone so perfectly? How did they do this? How could they have carried those blocks? Like, it's a triangle, guys. It's a fucking triangle. Like, you're moving bricks. They use slave labor in Egypt, you know? Like, they moved the bricks. They placed down the bricks by using big, strong men, and they just kept doing that. It probably took them many years. But they did it, because we do know that Cleopatra, they do say that Cleopatra was alive. When did they say? She was closer to being alive when there were like still the woolly mammoth. Like, yeah, the woolly mammoth would have still existed while Cleopatra was alive. No, I don't think that's what it was. Yeah, Cleopatra was closer to being around when the cell phone was being created before she was when the Pyramid of Giza were created. Which means they were created a long time ago. But we do know that like the Egyptian empire was like pretty fucking big and pretty fucking long. Like Sumeru, like there were a bunch of like Middle Eastern and like North African nations there that have been around for like ages. So like it's not too out there. I don't think there's a big mystery that comes. I just think white people are shocked that like minorities can do things they can do. But hey, that's controversial. People will get me for that. But I do think that this would be considered like a human-made thing. Maybe they even think that this was made by humans who interacted with this advanced alien race before they like, you know, disappeared and we don't know where they went. So maybe they think that this was a way of like worshiping them or maybe helping them out, because there is a warp pad there. So it would cause debates about whether or not was it human made or was it made by this advanced species, alien or just human or human adjacent, that would no longer exist. Who's to say? I'm honestly surprised that this video is like this long, but Rosa's Fountain, location in Europe or somewhere in Spain to be more precise. Now this is the trickier one, because humans in this universe would not know what the gems look like. Any historical evidence of that would probably not have been written down, because we do see there were humans that interacted with the gems, but these humans were, well, they were not as advanced as like other humans. Well, not as advanced, but like they probably were not keeping written records down. Like written record was a more recent thing that became to research very later on, which is kind of why you'll see there are many different, like in mythologies, not just like Greek mythology, but many mythologies across the world, that there are varying tales and differing ways of how each story is told, because they were not written down. So people were probably just like each teller told it differently. Someone was recording that, or was recording it best from memory. So even then, we don't have a definitive idea of like how concrete that mythology was to how it was actually documented back in the day. So thinking about it like that, humans probably do not know what the gems look like. Again, if we're keeping up with this debate about whether or not they are alien or they lived on Earth and just don't exist anymore, or who knows, maybe even traveled across the stars and like live on some other planet. But keeping up with that debate, Rose's fountain would cause a lot of debates because Rose's fountain looks human. Rose looks very humanoid. So because of that, I do have to wonder how they would think of that. Like, would they think that this is like a human goddess? Like, this was like something created by humans and was a goddess of some like country or some far off civilization or village that no longer exists anymore, that worship this goddess, and would bring in like a weird historical mystery about like the lost goddess of Spain, the statue of the forgotten goddess, or something like that. They would have to think that this is some sort of god. If not a god, maybe someone who belongs to some sort of royal lineage that is no longer seen. Maybe like a lost royalty, and like people are trying to figure out like, oh my gosh, is she like a goddess, or is she some sort of like forgotten royalty? Was she a lover of some sort of royal? Because it is like a garden foundation, and then we do see that it's like gone down into a state of disrepair. We see that there are rose thorns all over, and then once they like revitalize the statue, we see, you know, Rose's statue, we see flowers popping up again, and we see Rose's tears, and we know that Rose's tears were able to like heal people. That's why they were at Rose's fountain, because Amethyst cracked her gem, and if her gem fully cracked, she would be dead. So they bring Amethyst there, and she gets healed up because the fountain heals gems. But we also know Rose's tears saved humans too, because Steven's spit, when he shared a juice box with Connie, healed her eyesight. Like, she used to have to wear glasses, but then after she drank out of the same cup as Steven, her eyesight is immediately clear. Like, it's no longer blurry. So it does make me wonder if humans went back to this fountain, you know, to like do some geological research, and then they fell into like this fountain of tears, and all of a sudden whoever, like, maybe they had bad vision too, and were like, oh my god, I can fucking see clearly now, I don't need my fucking glasses. Like, now this fountain would be considered like a medical marvel. This would like be an in-universe equivalent to like the Fountain of Youth. This is like a medical marvel. Like, this would have to be studied 10 times over, which would make you wonder, okay, this would probably also incite the debate of like alien life over, again, a human species that lived on Earth. The Strawberry Battlefield, bordering between Norway and Sweden. Another thing that makes this interesting, when we see the Strawberry Battlefield, we do see that the strawberries are like way bigger than like your normal strawberries. Like, we see multiple strawberries that are as big as Steven. And let's say that Steven is about like 5 foot. Well, that's a bit too much. Let's say that Steven is about 4'6". He's like, what, 12? So yeah, let's say he's about like 4'10", 4'9". If he is that height, then I wouldn't be surprised that these are like some fucking humongous strawberries. Do people eat these strawberries? Probably not. They would probably think that this is something from like radiation, because nuclear war testing might not be as good as before. Like, Russia might not have felt the need, because again, it's lost a mass majority of its land. Like, it can no longer like, you know, sustain constant like test bombings because it doesn't have the land mass to do that. So thinking of it that way, yeah, so Russia probably doesn't have as many nuclear warheads as it used to, which means that America would have more nuclear warheads than Russia, hypothetically. Who knows? I'm not studying political science or geology. I'm just making assumptions based off the limited knowledge that I do know. With the battlefield, another thing that's interesting is that we see the weapons that the gems carried, and these weapons are fucking huge, like as big as a fucking person. Like, if my mom were to stand next to them, she's like 6'1", my mom wouldn't even be like leveling at the same length of these weapons. These are big weapons. These are tall weapons. These are heavy ass weapons. So this would make it seem as if some war had to have been fought, which, yeah, a war was fought. We know this as the viewer. But to humans, what war could have possibly been fought? Could the aliens, like, you know, the crystal gems, we know they're aliens, but like, what would historians like think of that? Hypothetically, maybe they think the human species, or like, again, if we're doing, let's look at the two different debates. If they think it was aliens, then they must think that the aliens were fighting some other like force. Maybe they thought that humans were fighting the aliens. Who's to say? So maybe they think that humans were fighting these aliens, because we also see like regular swords too. So maybe they start thinking, oh, maybe our human ancestors were like fighting off like these aliens, and because of that, that's why there's all these like weapons and stuff, because, you know, all of that. But then at the same time, they might not find any bones. So then they might be thinking, okay, where are all the bones then? If a war was fought between humans and like these alien things, then yeah, there needs to be bones, which would bring into the argument of like a previous human species or human adjacent species that was more advanced than humans, obviously. And maybe it brings into discussions like, hey, maybe these like human adjacent species was like taller than us and stronger than us and faster than us, and maybe they were fighting to protect something. They would have to find, like, they would probably try and figure out, why was there a war being fought in this area? What caused the war to break out? What was going on? This brings a lot of discussions in, and I honestly can't say. This would be very big on a historical record, because there would have been a war fought with weapons no human could really wield. At least 50% of the weapons humans couldn't wield. So it's like, okay, humans can barely wield these weapons. There would be no human remains in that area. So who were fighting these wars? Why are there no body parts or anything indicating like fallen soldiers or fallen companions, or like what was going on? And I can't be for certain as to what this would be. But we do know that there are a few corrupted gems here as well. So maybe they thought that these were like monsters. So maybe they think, oh, because again, if we go by the corrupted gems, humans have probably seen corrupted gems throughout the course of time. And if they have seen these corrupted gems throughout the course of time, then that would bring into a discussion, okay, maybe these monsters that we see, because maybe they think that the corrupted gems are their own separate thing. Like, hear me out a bit. They might think that the corrupted gems are not, you know, the gems that were creating all this advanced technology going on. Like, they think that they're a completely separate entity. Maybe they think that these are what the war was being fought over. Like, oh, these monsters were like coming across the world, and maybe this like advanced species was like trying to fend them off to like save themselves, but they weren't able to do that. Like, that's the only other thing I think of. Or maybe they think that the monsters are like aliens or something. Like, it's something out of like Get Out. Not Get Out. Which one? A Quiet Place. Like, maybe they think it's like a Quiet Place situation where they like fell from like the space or something, and like they were like fighting them off and stuff like that. But again, I can't be 100% certain about that. The Sky Spire, northern with Sweden. At first glance, they would probably look like mountains to the people that live there, but they're actually floating rocks. I don't really know how people would be studying these though, because yeah, at first it probably is just like, yeah, we're gonna stay away. Like, they probably build their villages away from like the Sky Spire because there's so many floating rocks in that area. So it's like, yeah, let's just keep our distance. But now I feel like once aviation became a thing, okay, how exactly do we investigate this? Because again, there's a lot of rocks that are scattered around, and I feel like it would make like, you know, trying to like investigate that area really hard to navigate, because again, you're maneuvering between very small rocks, very small crevices. It's hard to like get in between that and like navigate any airplane through that. And small airplanes, if you don't know, they crash very easily. They crash very commonly. So it's a very serious thing. So I wouldn't be surprised if they don't really use airplanes. Maybe drones. But even then, the Sky Spire seems to be very high up there. They would probably also have to like make sure that flights are intersecting away from like the Sky Spire. But again, with aviation, we don't know how high the Sky Spire is. So most airplanes keep a maximum cruising speed of 30,000 feet to 40,000 feet. Sometimes in between to 35,000. So the Sky Spire is probably seen throughout like airplane windows, and it's probably like considered like some sort of like marvel to look at when you're flying across the sky. But they probably do also keep their distance and keep it away from like aviation experts. So airplanes probably try to avoid this at all costs. The Sky Arena, located in Finland. I would say that this one is a little more accessible than the Sky Spire, because it's like a more like solid foundation. It's like a triangle type, it's a triangle situation. So it's probably more easier to investigate. Like, you could probably like land a small plane there. It's a much easier way of doing it. And it doesn't seem to be too large of like a fall. I mean, it is a pretty decent fall, because we see that Stephen and Connie fell from that height. But it would be a bit more investigatable, I think. But again, I do also feel like they probably put more drones there, because again, the foundation is crumbling, so you don't want to put a plane down there and then the plane lands and then it ends up like breaking the entire structure. But because of the Sky Spire, probably residents like keep their distance from there, because again, it could fall at any moment. It's crumbling rocks falling from down there, so they probably keep their distance from that as well. the Galaxy Warp, location in the middle of the sea where Russia used to be. So the Galaxy Warp, I feel, would have like a Stonehenge-esque like history towards it. Like, no one knows for certain what it was used for. Some people might come off to the assumption that it's a type of sundial with all of like the warp pads. They don't know that the warp pads are used for teleportation. So they probably think that it's some sort of like, maybe it's like a traditional thing, or maybe it's used for like theater or something else. Maybe they think the Galaxy Warp is some sort of like theater that was used back in the day and it has been like disrepaired. But we do see that the gems have like actively destroyed the warps. And then the warps got like, you know, fixed again. But then they got destroyed again. So it's very hard to say. But I do feel like it would get like the Stonehenge treatment. Pink Diamond's Palanquin, location South Korea. This would fall under the alien tech and would definitely spark questions about like royalty. Again, going with the whole human adjacent species that was more advanced than we are. They probably think that this Palanquin was something to do with like royalty. And we do see that this area where like the Palanquin was is blocked off. Like, we actively see Steven and Greg like climb through a hole in the gate to get into the Palanquin. So the South Korean government knows that this Palanquin exists and they block it off for various reasons. I wouldn't be surprised if scientists and historians investigate this very commonly, but they keep it out of reach of the public for like any possible dangerous locations. The Shooting Star ship, location China or Mongolia. Again, very hard to tell because there's no borders. Would definitely bring up discussions about alien tech, and I'm sure that China has been studying this area, but with the security measures that we do see that the ship takes, yeah, probably they don't go into there too much because they don't want to like trigger something off. I also do wonder about gem artifacts as well, because we do see a bunch of gem artifacts. Ain't no way that there aren't gem artifacts in whole ass museums across the fucking world that the gems probably just don't know about, because we do know that the gems have like, they can keep to themselves relatively. It wasn't until like Greg and Rose met that they were like, I guess we gotta like interact with the humans. I don't want to do that. But we do see that like the gems normally keep to themselves. And I wouldn't be surprised if they weren't able to keep track of like humans, like, you know, taking up this technology or learning about this and that and the other. Artifacts definitely studied by historians, archaeologists, and many others, bring up debates about, again, alien or advanced human adjacent species. Constant argument over that constantly. I wouldn't be surprised if that becomes like a new dinosaur thing or something. But I also feel like it would cause a lot of like rich people probably also are like buying like artifacts, like these gem artifacts, because they think, oh my gosh, this is like some advanced human species or something. Like, oh my god, I want to buy this. But I do feel like all these gem artifacts would have to end up in like museums or rich people or like just something. Like, these have to be considered like archived and looked at and studied, and people have to be touring these places because there's no way that humans have not been interacting with this technology. And I also have to bring in the most important question that I'm sure we've all been wondering ever since we got into Steven Universe, and since the show has ended almost 5 years ago. Where the fuck is the government? So I think that's something that has plagued not just me, but many fans of Steven Universe, is the lack of like government officials that we see throughout the series, especially with all the crazy ass stuff that has happened in Steven Universe. Like, when it comes to even small examples of what happened with gem settlements, I can only assume that certain governments, again, like I said when we were like talking about all the gem stuff, like certain governments have to have this stuff blocked off. Like, maybe some of these are tourist attraction, because we do see not every area that has like gem technology or gem influence has corrupted gems, but the areas that do have gems that are corrupted, yeah, they're probably like keeping their distance. They're probably having blockades, but that ain't stopping no fucking humans. That ain't stopping no fucking humans. I mean, hell, that episode where they found Peridot's ship and like the teenagers were by the ship, and like Steven was like, oh my gosh guys, this is like gem tech, it's very dangerous, I gotta call the crystal gems. And then all the teenagers were like, fuck it, we ball. And then they end up almost getting Steven fucking killed by the crystal gems because they thought Peridot was inside the ship. Like, it was crazy. It was a crazy fucking episode. He was scared. I felt so bad for him, the poor baby. But, and like, they kept trying to tell the crystal gems, like, no, Steven is in that ship. He's in that ship. You gotta stop. You're gonna kill him. It was a sad episode. It was a crazy episode. I felt so bad for Steven. Like, there are so many big events that happen that make me like question again, where the fuck is the government? Why isn't the government doing anything? I mean, we get it. Like, I think it would be interesting, if not have Steven at school, at least have like his like dad like watch the news, or at the very least let Steven watch the news because he has a TV. So it's like, have him like watch the news and see what news sources are reporting when it comes to some of the crazy ass shit that happens in the series, because half the shit that happens in the series is happening on Earth. Like, let's talk about some of the big baller events. Like, for example, the moon base. There was a base on the moon, which would give an in-universe explanation as to why maybe they do not want to like explore the moon anymore, because they found that moon base and were like, why the fuck is there a base on the moon? Who the fuck built a base on the moon? Which would also probably bring even more discussions about like, okay, advanced human species or were those fucking aliens? Maybe I mean, again, because we do see a spaceship in South America, so maybe they're like, you know, maybe they had already figured out space travel, and then they traveled to space, and then they built a base in space. Maybe they don't live in the solar system anymore. Maybe they live in a completely different solar system. But yeah, the alien thing is more correct. And then I feel like after, like, you know, Steven Universe Future, don't even get me started on Steven Universe. I don't think it's a bad show. Like, a lot of people, I feel like, over-hate on Steven Universe Future. I just feel like Steven Universe Future would benefit if it was longer. Like, I feel like as a series, it only having, like, I think, what, 8 to 10 episodes? I think it had 8 to 10 episodes. 8 episodes. Only having that many episodes with some of the things that they were talking about, I feel like they should have just, like, stretched it out. Because seasons of Steven Universe were, like, 20 episodes long. If not 20 episodes, at least 15 episodes. I feel like they should have just stretched it out to make it feel more like worth it and more of like a gradual descent into like Steven becoming corrupted. But, you know, they didn't do that. So I can't get too mad at that. But either way, this would have to bring like some other thing. Because like in our universe, the reason why we don't really explore the moon anymore is because like, what the fuck else is there to explore? And even then, I do feel like if we do explore the moon again, y'all motherfuckers are just gonna say, well, it's AI generated. You win some, you lose some. And either way, the astronauts got their sights set on Mars. They've been talking about Mars for a hot minute. Mars is a whole year's journey away from us. I don't know how they had planned to do that. Elon, I don't know how the fuck you plan to go to Mars. That's a year-long trip. We don't even keep most astronauts on those shits for like a year. And then it would be a year or two and a year back. So I don't know. That's 2 years. That's 2 fucking years. I don't know who you're going to get to have that type of commitment. Another big thing is the fact that, you know, Lapis took all of Earth's water to make a pillar in like the middle of what we consider to be the Atlantic Ocean. At least this map shows that it's probably somewhere in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. So if if Lapis did that, there would have to be attention from government officials. There would have to be, like, government officials would have to question that. That's all the water in the world gone. Fishes died. Fishes are dead. Well, fucking hell. Thinking about it, all marine life is dead. Like, if we're really thinking about it, if Lapis took out every single water source, lakes, rivers, bays, basins, everything, there are no more fish. There are no more fish. Fish can only survive so long without water. There was a mass extinction event on Earth when it came to marine life. I know a marine biologist was stressed the fuck out when Lapis did that shit. Like, marine biologists across the world stressed the fuck out because how many animals died because of Lapis doing that shit? And then when the tower falls, keep in mind, if we remember how physics works, if you have something from a very high, like a very high object falling, then it's going to fall down with a lot of force. It's why people say not to drop a pen out of like a high story building, because if you do, it's going to get someone killed if it falls on someone. Like, it's going to like straight up hit someone in the head. pierce through their skull because of the force that's being generated. So think about it like that. All that water falling from that high of a height, like we're talking like outside of the stratosphere into like territory where like we're like bordering where like satellites are like orbiting the planet. That's kind of where the tower ends. Falling from that height would cause major tsunamis. Very major tsunamis. Tsunamis so big that it would quite literally submerge entire islands, killing millions, if not billions of people. Lapis just killed a shit ton of humans. She just killed a shit ton of marine life. Lapis has fucked a lot of people. Like Lapis is a cool design character. I think she has like a cool backstory, but she's done some fuck ass shit. We gotta admit that. I swear this runny nose. The cluster is also another thing because that shit was growing by the Earth's core, incubating inside of the Earth for millennia. Are you telling me that nobody, and I mean nobody, no seismologist, no earth scientist, no, not a single scientist realized, hey, there's like this big circular structure near the Earth's core that is not the Earth's core, that is not magma, that is not this, that, or the other. What the actual fuck is this thing? And they didn't know what it was. And ain't no one questioned that. And it couldn't have been that deep down either, because if they were able to make a drill in their backyard using like disregarded technology, both human and gem, it would have to be like not too deep. Like it would have been deep enough where it could incubate without being noticed, but not like too deep where like they wouldn't be able to dig into it, because like like no scientists at all, genuinely. But hey, that's me personally. I have an issue with it personally. That's crazy ass shit. The fact that not once, not twice, not even thrice, but we've probably had 5, if not 6 occasions where astral, like whole ass celestial bodies have come into Earth's contact. Like, how many fucking spaceships did we have? We had that one eye that came to Beach City back in like episode 2. We had the spaceship where Peridot and Jasper came down in. We have Blue Diamond's hand. We have Pink Diamond's hand, which can be found. I forgot where to find Pink Diamond's spaceship, but it's there, and we know that it's there, and I'm forgetting where it is. But I think it was in the desert. So it was in a desert region. I forgot to completely mention that. Again, we'll bring up debates about alien technology, or would probably be human adjacent. I don't think they would think it's alien because, again, Pink Diamond's ship looks like a boot. It's a leg. So I do have to think that if anyone was like studying it, they were probably thinking, okay, this has to be like a human adjacent species that made a spaceship based off of like a leg. That would be the discussion, because again, they don't really know what the aliens look like. So that's my thought process on that. So Pink Diamond spaceship, Yellow Diamond spaceship because she came back again. Then the 2 spaceships came down during Garnet's wedding. Then another spaceship. Like, it's a lot of fucking spaceships. Way too many spaceships. What the fuck is NASA doing? And they're always landing in the same fucking location too. You're telling me that the US government don't got eyes on fucking Delmarva? Why the fuck does Beach City keep getting a fucking alien invasion once a fucking week? There's so many. There's so many. That's not even accounting for the movie. That's not even accounting for the fact that in future there's a whole ass alien civilization. How the fuck did they get that past the government? Like that's just my thought process, because we do see that the government does get certain involvement. Like the South Korean government literally has the Palanquin blocked off, so they obviously know to like have that block off. And if they know to have that blocked off, then they know about this. Like there's no way that these governments aren't aware of that. And like we also have to think about the fact that the gems have interacted with Earth's history. Like the gems constantly say like, oh yeah, we were like there when this happened, we were there when that happened. They have a whole ass portrait of them helping with the American Revolution, which kind of crazy to think about the fact that the gems help with the colonization of North America and were kind of like absentee during slavery. But you know, I guess that's their factory setting in, so hey, I can't get on them for that. That's what they were made for, you know. Pearl even sings in It's Over, Isn't It, that Rose was in multiple relationships with humans. But then again, Rose is the one who looks like the most human in comparison. Like, if she just wears like a regular ass shirt and you don't see like the gem in her belly button, then you're like, oh, she's just like an abnormally tall woman. Like, that's it. So I don't really feel like it would cause like much conjunction. But the other gems like Amethyst, Pearl, Garnet, they're like differing skin colors. That has to be talked about in like a few journals. Like, I have this lover, her name is Rose, and she has these 3 companions that are not of human skin color. Very strange, possibly devils, but maybe they thought that those were hallucinations. I also can't say. If you're wondering what I think is a possible reason why we don't see enough government involvement, I want to say maybe the gems struck up a deal with the American government, so the American government just doesn't really get as involved. But even then, that theory is like lackluster at best. So my more personal theory, I think that Rebecca Sugar just did not really think about that aspect of her story that much and wanted to focus more on Steven and the gems and Beach City, like just keep it in like this very enclosed area, not thinking about all the other consequences that come with these types of events. And because of that, that's why it is the way it is. That's why we don't see a whole lot of government involvement. And I'm not going to sit here and say that Rebecca is a bad writer or Rebecca should have done more, because I understand that as someone who does writing myself, sometimes you're going to put things in your story that have like a very big ripple effect if you think about it in like my hyper realistic mainframe. I can still have fun though, but it's like if I think about it in my hyper realistic mainframe, then it's like, oh yeah, that has a lot of geopolitical tension. But hey, I'm not going to blame her for that. I still think that Steven Universe is like a pretty decent show. I still like to watch it over and over again. I think it has like very interesting dilemmas, very interesting conflicts, and she's very good at writing messy ass characters. Like, these are messy ass characters. I would love to see Rebecca do like a more adult centric show. Like, she could really do it. I think she would do a very good job. Okay. Now, that is the end of my video. Thank you so much for tuning in. I made a random ass TikTok about this and I didn't think it would get that much attention, but now I have like 300 likes on the post. So thank you everyone who took an interest into like this very asinine topic. I know that everything is stressful. I know like we gotta fight the good fight. Fight against fascism. Fight against Elon. Fight against oligarchies. Fight against everything. But at the same time, we also gotta like, you know, try and chill, try and relax, try not to be as stressed. So take my videos as that sense of comfort. I have work soon. I gotta go to work for 3:30 and it's 1:30, so I gotta go and get dressed and stuff because I walk to work. I don't have a car. That sucks. But anyway, thank you so much for watching this video. Like and subscribe. If you want me to do more videos like this, then yeah, consider asking for suggestions, because I want to get on Genshin Impact's ass. Inazuma in and of itself. Oh, listen, y'all get ready for my Genshin Impact video series. That's just going to be the bomb. So like and subscribe, and please come back next time. See you later. Bye-bye.